there is increasing uncertainty, and part of that uncertainty is because of the increasing dichotomy between different political views. Compromise is, it almost seems like it's old-fashioned, that it's not exercised anymore. There are new actors. The ability of people to actually create a sense of a campaign or to protest or whatever it might be using social media is really quite incredible. So the emergence of these new actors using these new technologies in order to have a voice is one of the things that's creating lots of uncertainty. But I think the other thing that creates uncertainty is just this notion of disruptive exponentiality. And it depends on where you are in the change as to whether it's progress or pain. Now, I don't know about you, but if the change happens to be my idea, then it feels like progress. And I'm wondering why all these other people around me aren't kind of coming with me. I get it. How come you don't get it? Of course it's good. Come with me. This change is wonderful. However, if you're one of the people that I don't understand it, he's not really communicating that very well with me. I don't get it. I don't like this change. It feels painful. And we have to realize, I think, with this, that actually it's not that we resist change, but we resist being changed. And I think therein lies what we need to think about when we look at the disruptive nature, the exponentially disruptive nature of what we see in the outside world right now. I'm going to come back to this idea later on because I think there's a really strong need for leaders and consultants, and I see lots of kind of overlap between those two descriptions of what people do, to, some of the things maybe that we need to think about. So let's have a little think about what some technologies are doing, how they're starting to impact the way that we work. And artificial intelligence is the game-changing technology, I think. It's certainly the one that's arguably more mature than a lot of the others. So let's just remind ourselves what it is. AI is about humans creating machines that think like us, that act like us, that recognize speech, that recognize objects and people visually, that can learn, that can reason, that can create strategies, that can play games. I love the language translation part because I just adore the fact that the Babel fish is now real. So when you think about the power of some of these AI technologies, and AI, of course, is an umbrella term for a number of different technologies, then you really get a sense of how much more radical change there probably is to come, given what we've already seen from these technologies. And kind of this is where we are right now with AI. So broadly speaking, we have these kind of three buckets of AI type of functions. So we have robotic process automation, which is really replicating something that a human will do, but doing it quicker, faster, more accurately. We then have the next one, which is about context awareness and retention. So thinking, the use of chatbots, the use of robo-advisors, where we can actually call up a help desk, and eventually we get to speak to a person because the first person we spoke to is actually a chatbot. But the important thing here is they're able to kind of put into context what they're hearing. And the interesting one for me anyway is this last one, where it's domain-specific expertise. It's a really quite a famous story now in that Google's DeepMind created an artificial intelligence that took on the World Go champion. Go is an Asian game, many, many hundreds of millions of moves. And what they did, they didn't teach it to play the game, they taught it how to learn. And part of that teaching it how to learn was allowing it to see games in action. It took on the world champion, lost the first game, won the next 4. And the human player said it was outthinking me. It was forcing me into making mistakes. So it wasn't doing the typical machine thing, which is pretty much formulaic. It was actually understanding the context and trying to work out and learn from the opposing player what it was doing and find other ways to beat him. Now, what Google's DeepMind did then was actually create an updated version of that. They allowed the updated version to learn for 3 days, was given learning rules, not how to play the game, and it beat its younger sibling 100 games to nil. And that difference was within a year. So the way in terms of these kind of expert domains that AI is starting to evolve is really, really rapid. With that in mind, how do I see artificial intelligence starting to evolve from an enterprise perspective over the next 15 years or so? So broadly speaking, we're starting to see kind of this area now. We're starting to see real-time translation. We have smart machines. We have increasingly smart sensors. Software is increasingly able to edit itself. I find it absolutely fascinating that there are IT companies in India at the moment recruiting tens of thousands of programmers to work in machine learning in the full knowledge that in 5 years' time, the machines can program themselves, so they'll be making thousands of machine learning programmers redundant. So we'll see some form of AI adopted by most firms. Intelligent agents, if they're not already, will be managing our days, managing our diaries, and we'll start to see swarm robotics. There's a really interesting idea at the moment to use swarm robotics in Earth orbit to try and deflect the sun to help with climate change. So the middle time frame there, when we move forward another 5 years, possibly 3/4 of customer interactions will be by artificial intelligence. And I think the important thing here is when we see these kind of things is, what does that mean for the way that I develop relationships with my clients? You know, how do I separate the thing that the AI will do from the value that I can add in those interactions? So AI will increasingly be responsible for product development. It will become increasingly creative. We're already seeing AI able to paint pictures. You can decide whether they're good or not if you ever see any of them, and create music. The other thing, of course, is we'll start to see autonomous vehicles everywhere. And it's quite easy for us to get kind of locked into thinking, well, that's autonomous cars, isn't it? But it isn't. It's cars, it's vans, it's lorries, it's boats, it's planes. It's the whole gambit. There was a study a little while ago talking about planes that was published in Business Insider. And they asked a number of professionals what did they think were the chances of their role being automated within 20 years, I think it was. And in essence, the chance of airline pilots' role being automated, airline pilots thought was about 50%. So if we then start to think about 2035, we're already starting to see the first ones, but we'll have a large number of fully autonomous, distributed and automated organizations. So firms that actually don't have employees, but still deliver services because they're running through AI. AI will have penetrated all sectors and functions. Artificial intelligence will be everywhere. It will be in the environment as well. It will make its way into the natural world. And we'll start edging towards this idea of self-aware and robots, self-aware, self-replicating robots. When you think about some of the ideas that are portrayed in the Terminator movies, if we just forget the time travel for a minute, then the fact that the artificial intelligence was first of all able to take control, to lock people out, then to recreate using 3D printed machines to perform certain functions, you know, all that's the kind of thing that we're talking about here. But actually, that's quite close now. So this kind of timeline, if you like, about how artificial intelligence will start to impact the enterprise is really interesting. And I think the important thing is to think about, so how does that change what we do as a business? How does that change what we do as people and how we work with our people? Because if everyone's using the same artificial intelligence systems and processes, then actually that commoditizes our product and services. So why is someone going to buy your service rather than your competitors? It probably comes down to the relationships and the human element. So paradoxically, the increasing amount of automation we see, particularly in service businesses, in service industries, the human element, I think, becomes increasingly important. So just building on the change idea around artificial intelligence and how it enables new business concepts, this really starts to bring together a number of different technologies. And I think what's really important is to bear in mind the combinational impact of some of these technologies. AI is really interesting from a computing and a scientific perspective on its own. But when you combine it with mechanics or robotics, say in a car, when you put that car's ownership onto a blockchain, which allows different people to subscribe to that service and use it, when the car's manufactured from 4D materials, which means it can self-repair, when it self-insures because it's so reliable it hardly ever has an accident and it's just not worth a finance company insuring it anymore, you have a new business model. And that's the kind of the impact of bringing different technologies together. And I want to kind of look at that in a number of other examples. The change that we see is not just about the technology now, though. It's using the technology, yes, but we also need to understand that actually it's about thinking. It's about looking at what the new technologies represent for us in opportunities to change what we've done in the past. And this is a really good example. So the combination of 3D printing, of new materials and artificial intelligence allows this construction group in China to create 57-story buildings in 19 days. And I've probably got different planning application process in China. However, the idea here is that you prefabricate and you actually lock it together on site. But it's interesting, isn't it? We've got these new technologies, and it's actually the new thinking that allows that to happen as well. Another one of my favorites. There are some really simple service-type processes that can be automated as well, and that can be automated in a way that creates a service experience for customers. So here's the hotel reception area at a theme park hotel in Japan. And when you rock up, you can be checked in by a robot. And when I was a bit younger, I thought robots would probably look a little bit like that. Or you could be checked in by a humanoid robot that at least looks pleasant and like a person. Or you can be checked in by a velociraptor. Guess which is the most popular check-in desk? So something as simple as checking into a hotel all of a sudden can create a really different customer experience. This gorgeous looking automobile is a 3D printed car created by Local Motors, a small US car manufacturer. It has 50 components. A normal car has 5,000, 10,000, depending on the model. It can be manufactured in micro factories, and you'll pay back the investment in the microfactory producing 2,500 cars. In a conventional car factory, you need 50 to 75,000 to do that. So if you've got a car that you're manufacturing from 50 components rather than several thousand, already you don't need the component supply chain that you need right now to manufacture cars. If you're creating a network of microfactories to produce this car, you don't need to mass produce in really big factories, put all your cars on boats and ship them around the world. So the second and third order effects of 3D printing a car actually goes into component supply chain, and it goes into logistics as well. The important thing is, though, you don't stop here. So what Local Motors currently produce as well is a 3D printed autonomous minibus. And both these products, the minibus and this car, they're available now. So you start to realize that not only are these technologies interesting and cool and a lot of fun, but they have the potential to radically change not only, in this case, automobile manufacturing, but also the related industries as well. So when we start to think about combining some of those technologies, and we think about our workplaces, and we think about how we might wander down the street, we potentially have a world of different actors starting to emerge. So we've got normal people. Hands up if you're a normal person. Not many. A room full of consultants really should be putting their hands up at that point. Normal people, enhanced people. So human 2.0, whether it's through nootropics, whether it's some kind of IT device that's inside them, whether it's some kind of chip under their skin, which you can get right now for some companies to enable you to access the building and buy your coffee. Whether it's robots, whether it's Android, holograms, avatars, other intelligent manifestations, these things are coming to a workspace near us over the not too far distant future. And that's kind of interesting. But it's interesting for a number of weird reasons. Like, how do you work with a robot colleague who never has holiday, never has sick leave? How do you report to an artificially intelligent robot? So you start to see how this kind of scenario in the future causes us to question a whole bunch of things beyond, oh, this is interesting, I might be working with a robot and telling it what to do, or whatever it might be. So a world of multiple actors in the future really does start to change our workplace and the way that we interact with people and other things.